All right, we are live. Welcome to the show. I want to give a shout out to everybody at home that's watching. Thank you guys for joining us. This is a super special day because not only do we have Miss Ashley Gomez in the house, which is you guys are going to get so much value out of today. If you know. I'll leave it at that. But also, we've never done a format like this, which is super cool.
I love that.
So, you know, if I have to use the restroom, I'm going to have to, like, put the mic down. I got to run.
We'll keep ripping.
You know, if that happens, you'll see me run by, and you guys just, you know, you have to, I'll just apologize now. So, but, man, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
You know, she got in yesterday. She came in specifically for this event. And Ashley, if you guys don't know her, she is literally the loyalty queen. We've had the privilege of knowing her for years at this point.
Yeah.
Become an incredible friend. And we've talked about getting you on the show.
Yep.
And schedules aligned. And I will say I'm going to brag on her for a second. We had an opportunity to hang out last night. We were exhausted, but, you know, when we were coming in town, we started to get into these conversations, and I was blown away, just totally blown away. Not only the relevance in our business, but how practical and the things that I just don't know this stuff, any of it. And you have such a wealth of knowledge. So to give you guys some context, I mean, if you're looking to increase the amount, the price point in which people spend with you, if you're looking to increase the frequency in which people spend it, you're looking to reduce churn, if you're looking to reduce your client acquisition cost, if you want to open up more cross-sell opportunities to sell other products, today, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts, the how-tos, the tactics of what you can do. Ashley works with some of the biggest brands in the world, big conglomerate, global companies, and that she's doing loyalty programs and doing just that. Some of the stats that you're going to hear today in regards to how this directly impacts the bottom lines of some of the biggest companies in the world is something that I hope the listeners can take home with them and not only just understand, but really use practical application to improve their businesses. So, Ashley, I wanted to kind of give your bio real quick before I open it up to Mr. Rod. But Ashley comes with us with an ridiculous pedigree and a lot of experience in the loyalty space. I don't know. There's not a lot of people. I mean, you say it's a smaller industry.
It is.
But, I mean, to have this much experience in this space is kind of unique.
It is.
Well, with these size and these type of companies, these aren't mom and pops.
Right.
You're doing this for
2012 with Shell Oil, like running loyalty for them. Remember we had the little gas cards when you take it to the
Fuel Rewards Network.
Unbelievable. Then we had Winn-Dixie 2015. We've got Polo Tropical. After that, we've got Monet. We've got Kendra Scott, and now PAR Technology, basically doing some of the biggest restaurant brands in the world for their loyalty programs. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here, if not billions, running through, you know, this type of program. And to know that you've got your hand, I saw you this morning working, running, doing all these different things. And so I just want to say, number one, thank you for being on. We're so excited to have you, and it's so good to see you.
Thanks, guys. I am beyond stoked to actually be here today. I was telling both of them earlier today. I was like, "Well, first time caller, like long time listener, but I'm like first time podcaster. Let's do this. We're ready for it.
That's perfect.
We're so stoked to be here, and I think knowledge base is transferable, right? I think that's the big thing that we're going to take away today. Loyalty isn't just within one industry. Loyalty is amongst all industries. Yes. It's relevant across every industry that you can probably touch. And you don't realize what loyalty truly is until you start actually getting into the weeds of what is loyalty to a customer versus what is it to the business. And so I think it's going to be great to kind of do a deep dive today to figure out what is it going to be relevant to your business or, you know, for our listeners' businesses.
I was blown away just opening before we went live, just, you know, the origin of loyalty programs and how deep and how long ago
it's been around.
You shared, you know, how long it's been around, and you don't think of it, right? You think of, you know, if you think about age-old, you know, loyalty programs, the oldest one I think about is, you know, frequent flyer miles. It goes back to when I was first flying. But, you know, you're telling me it goes back hundreds of years past that.
1800s, they used to have punch cards, right? And that's stamp cards. They used to do, if you remember, Frost, like different banks actually used to have like these little coin things where you can save pennies or quarters that had different names in the back. They had Sacagawea and stuff like that, and you can collect them. And once you're done collecting them, you can go inside of a bank to receive XYZ. And they've been doing this for many, many years. It's not just, you know, something with technology, which is, you know, where the airline and hotel industry kind of drove the pack for that. But yeah, you don't need technology to actually have loyalty.
And I wanted to, that's a perfect way to segue. I wanted to get your perspective. What is loyalty, and how can, we understand that in its most practical form? Before you answer that, I just want to tell you guys at home, we are watching the live stream. So we want to make it interactive. If you have questions, please just put them in the comments. Please put them in the chat. Obviously, we'll ask Ashley to stop and address that, which would be perfect. We want it to be interactive. We appreciate you guys.
I got to give a quick shout out, Dan Smith from Michigan, man. Welcome to the show. Happy to see you on, dude.
It's awesome. It's good stuff.
Another Michigan brother. I can't let that go.
I would say go blue, but right now I have to say go big blue because my boys are in the Sweet 16.
You talk about the UK.
Aggies lost like last week too. I was like, oh, it was so heartbreaking. Actually, I think they lost against Michigan too.
Did.
I wasn't going to say that. I knew that'd be the quickest way to piss you off this morning. I was not
I'm not doing the podcast now.
Wasn't about to do that. Look at Dan says go blue. My man.
So let's start there. So what is loyalty?
So when you think of loyalty, and I come from the restaurant space, but then prior to that I came from oil and gas, retail. One, think of it from your consumer perspective. I am loyal to a brand because of XYZ, right? And from a perspective of what I would want as a consumer, I'm loyal to the brands that treat me well, right? I'm loyal to the brands that are consistent. I'm loyal to the brands that give me offers. But then I'm loyal to the brands that actually know me and know how I order, know exactly what I'm doing, and know exactly how to communicate to me. That is loyalty from that perspective. When you think of it from the brand side, right, the brands have to look at it from a financial perspective. They have to look at it from different segmentation perspective, right? How can I make my customer loyal? And we look at loyalty kind of like an emotional scale is what we say. So there's transactional loyalty, and then you build it to emotional loyalty. Transactional gets them through the door, right? I have this very rich offer. I have something that other brands don't have, and the customer bites the bullet. And then from there, you look at what their journey could potentially look like. You know who does loyalty really well is Chick-fil-A, and so does Chipotle, right? They built that emotional loyalty to where the transactional loyalty is kind of like off beaten path because their brand is so consistent. The food that you receive is so consistently good to where now they built that brand around, let's think of what they do for their community, right? There's more community engagement, and the customer says, I identify with this brand because they support this organization. And so when you think of Chick-fil-A doesn't do a lot of discounts. They do discounts every now and then, but they know their customer better than anybody else.
Yeah, I never get a discount. I always
Correct.
get hey, come in and we'll give you a free chicken sandwich.
Correct, yeah, because they know what your ordering habits are. And so when you think of that, and they actually personalize their touches really well, their manager of the store, the location that you probably visit, is the one that actually sends that offer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They do a lot of personalization that way based on the location that you go and visit. So it adds that emotional touch to it, and it also has that personalization touch to it. So two different realms, right? Loyalty can mean different things to different people, but I think in general, when you're loyal to a brand, it's because the brand is consistently delivering the product that they marketed to you.
That's really good. So why I'm a business owner. I run some sort of local organization, and I see that these big box brands put an enormous amount of money towards these loyalty programs. Number one, why? Why are they doing that? And then after we answer that question, I'd like to answer the question of, well, why would I want to do that, and can I do that? I'm not a McDonald's. I'm a local provider.
Yeah.
What can I learn, and do I have anything to learn from what these big companies are doing? Yeah.
So I think when big brands actually launch loyalty programs, financially driven, one, and then two, data. The wealth of data that you're actually going to receive from your customers, identifying themselves up front, and then knowing what their spending behaviors are, knowing how frequently they come in, is the most critical path to success. And then from there, it's up, stepping it up and saying, okay, do I have a program that I can market to them to get more data from them? And then ultimately capitalizing on what, a customer just identifying themselves. That's basically it. When you think of mom and pop shops, right, tech is so expensive. And I say that so lightly because I'm in tech right now, but I know how expensive it is. For the mom and pop shops, it is the art of customizing a communication point, right? So identifying yourself, but also making sure that the customer feels loved up front. And that could be loyalty in itself, right? They don't need money to have a good act of kindness. And I think also the communication touch points, I think Rod and I were discussing this earlier, how do you communicate to a customer? Like, how frequently should you do that? And a lot of it's going to be based on the industry that you're in, right? And within restaurant realms, a lot of customers get mass amount of comms. Like, you can get up to 4 a day, and you're like, I'm not going to read it. But how are you going to differentiate yourself by communicating to your customer? And I think from my side, if a customer wants to be communicated to, they'll tell you. They'll actively say, hey, yes, I want to receive these emails. I want to engage with your brand. I will open this email. And that's going to be up to you guys to say, okay, cool. Am I making the valid effort to ultimately communicate with this customer enough to build their loyalty, to build that brand loyalty? So there's like a crawl, walk, run phased approach that I typically like to take with brands. It's saying don't do too much up front, because at the end of the day, your goal is just to get the data. And then fostering that actual relationship with your customer should be that walking phase. And then the running phase is, okay, how do I segment these customers from the low frequency to the high frequency?
Yeah, once they've
customer.
given you the answer, right?
Correct.
Then you kind of set the ground rules once they give you that answer.
Yep.
Loyalty loyalty is data.
Correct.
Essentially.
Yep.
Right? Because then if I have the data, then I can optimize for better,
That is
quote
correct.
unquote performance, or be able to give the customer what they are actually wanting.
Absolutely. And customers, think of yourself from that perspective, right? Like, I don't like giving my data out to just anybody.
Right.
I have to have a reason why I'm going to be doing that, and having that proposition value up front, so that a customer's like, you know what, dope, I'm going to sign up for this. That looks cool. And I think of like retailers, right? You get those pop-ups and it's like, sign up for 20% off. And you're like, great, because that outfit's going to cost me $200. So now it's only going to cost me $180. I'm signing up. But at that point, they got you. They hooked you. And so that's the type of value proposition you actually have to give, which is that transactional loyalty, right? When you think of that rainbow, how do I hook that customer to give me their information? And then how do I actively market to them?
Interesting. That's awesome.
I'm reminded, and I just want to remind the listeners, right? We're talking about you've got a pedigree of 13 years doing this at a high level. You exude this. The energy is just, it's incredible energy.
My energy's high all the time.
I'm curious, just where was the inspiration to pursue customer loyalty in 2012?
Yeah.
And it just so happens to be Shell Oil.
Yeah.
Like, how in the world do you develop a passion clearly now? But whether you knew it or not back then, you had to be inspired to pursue loyalty. Where did those origins come from?
My old boss hired, and he made it so well. He perceived it so well, but he's like, I only hire athletes. And I didn't really understand what we were actually trying to do. And he goes, do you know why? Because athletes don't quit. Because they're trained mentally to say, I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep going. Loyalty at that point between like 2010 and 2012 was actually just kind of starting to become a bigger thing. It started within like the fuel realm, and then the combo between fuel and grocery. And so when I took on that job, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, what's going on over here? What card is that? And then it just started becoming more of a cool experience, because it is the customer experience. And then you started thinking, oh my God, that's the end user. I'm the end user. And creating something from the ground up and seeing it literally built from the ground, it's a different fulfillment. And it does take a very different human being to stand these programs up by. That's why he's like, I hire athletes because they don't stop. And because this job itself is not easy. And it's the data, it is reminding yourself that you are the end user experience, and it is going to take time. To stand these programs up could take between, and I think now because tech is more advanced, but when I was doing it back in the day, it would take you over a year, 2 years just to get proof of concept out the door.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, you think of it, it takes an army, but it takes the right mindset to say, okay, I'm clearly doing this, very type A, very organized human beings, but ultimately you just want the best for the customer. And seeing that in live action, when we saw it at Winn-Dixie, I was like, good God, man, these people are so stoked about this little baby card. Like, what is happening? Like,
the keychain card.
The keychain card, just
them.
like wiping it, swiping it, and dealing it. Like, that is literally what they were so stoked about. But you just, to see that, because people are so value driven, to see that value, and you're like, cool, I actually created that. Like, I helped bring that to life. That was a big motivation for me.
So that's really cool. So tactical real quick. I wanted to go back to this because it sparks a comment. So like when a new brand comes to you, do you have to walk through the customer journey first before you start to construct the program? Is this something that the clients give you?
Yeah.
Is it both? Is it collaborative? And then I guess once you understand that, you have to be running, like, do you run the same play? Is it going to depend on, like, talk to us? Is it a true system playbook, and then you pick and choose from what you like, or it's take it or leave it?
Yeah, it's never pick and choosing what I like, because I would tell you 9 times out of 10 I don't like it. But I would say you do what's best for the customer. Typically, when a customer comes into us, you look at their data, and 9 times out of 10 they don't know their own data.
Right.
It is like, just let me just data dump to you,
right,
and then you do the analysis. And so, understandably so, we've already sold them on the program at this point, so they're already bought into loyalty. So by the time it actually gets to me, they're like, cool, can you just take a look at our data and figure out what type of program is actually going to be right for you? We have playbooks, and there's playbooks for every industry, right? Restaurant's a little different than retail. Retail is very different from oil and gas, and so there's different regulations, there's different discount rates, and you have to think of, okay, what can they financially afford? And that is ultimately how you start the construction of the program. You look at, okay, how frequently are these customers coming in? How much are they currently spending right now? And then what is the overall, participation rate? Whether they have a program or not, are they even engaging with your brand? What do they like? Customer sentiment. We always ask about customer feedback too, just because at the end of the day, if you have an awesome brand, but they consistently get 1 or 2 stars out the gate, you're like, dude, something's wrong. So loyalty isn't necessarily going to help your brand,
right,
because there's something else going on. And
that's a good thought.
Well, it's not going to fix it.
I think about, you take somebody that's got maybe a low rating like that.
Yeah.
They're not in need of a loyalty program. They're in need of, we've got some issues going on internally. I didn't even think about that. That makes a lot of sense that, you just because you think there's value in a loyalty program doesn't mean your house is in order to be able to launch one or stand one up, as you say.
People, the way that we actually construct it too with the larger brands, and people think it's like the last thing in their mind is like the actual employee training and the adoption of it in-house. You do not realize how misaligned brands are until you actually go inside of their house. And sometimes, brands don't have departments talking to each other. I would say that's pretty common across any industry, to be fair. Sometimes they're floating around in Mars, marketing's over here on Earth. Like, you just pie in the sky ideas, just try to make it stick. But then ultimately, that's the driving factor to help get loyalty over the finish line, right? If your front line, exactly. If your front line isn't singing the same tune as you are, and that program goes live, it could fail.
Right.
So you can build a beautiful program, but if that employee education isn't done up front, you're going to be dead in the water.
Wow. So somebody comes to you. We're an insurance agency, Urban Young. If I was going to give over, because I agree with that, by the way, most people don't know their data. We all hear that data is important. We all understand that we're supposed to have it, but it's hard to organize it. It's hard to get it. We're building a custom CRM, and it's been a unbelievable journey. I've called, you've built a couple of them. Yeah. I've called her a couple of times and be like, I don't know what we're doing, but this is way harder than I expected it to be. We're almost there, but Ashley's helped a lot. But for the data, what data points are you mentioned? Frequency, spend, engagement. Like, what are some hard points of data that someone says, okay, if I was going to do this and look at this, like, what are those data points?
Yeah, when we think of participation rate, and again, it's going to vary by brand, and by industry as well. So participation rate could range between 15% to 25%, and we think of that as being really, really good engagement. Wow. And that's, and it may seem like a low number, but in reality, what that will do was have incremental revenue impact to your bottom line. And so it's the participation rate, AOV increasing.
Real quick, participation rates for the listeners at home, because I don't understand this either. So what is considered participation?
Yeah, so when a customer comes in and identifies themselves as a loyalty member, when they actually keep identifying themselves when they check in, that's what we look at as participation rate.
So when they're walking into a store, when they call in, for us, it would be like when they call us. Yep. Or if you had an app, they're opening up the app.
Correct.
Or if it's if they open an email.
Yeah, it could vary again from one brand to another, right? Participation rate, when we think of it from a technology and loyalty platform perspective, that's what we look at. Customers legitimately identifying themselves and saying, okay, I actively want to check in and get points. I want to actively get a reward.
Got it.
Or increase my my spend by XYZ because you gave me an offer.
Got it.
And so that's how we look at it. And again, it could be different for you guys. It could be legitimately opening an email.
Yeah.
You also mentioned earlier, it might have been before we were online, that you talk about a 15% engagement rate, but then you also said that 20% of your client base, And my question is that become the loyalty base that is responsible for 80% of your revenue?
Yeah.
Is there some tie in there, or is that the same thing?
It's very similar. So participation rate is ranged from all of your customers, actually, right? So when you think of all your customers that are coming into the loyalty program, whether or not they're, and we say checking in, but whether or not they're actively utilizing their app or, identifying themselves at the POS, that is participation rate. When you think of and we say it's like 80-20 rule, 20%, the top 20% of your customer base is typically bringing in 80% of your revenue.
Totally.
It is. And those are the repeat customers. Those are your lifers. That's what we say. Those are the people that actively want to choose your brand over, the competitor's brand, because you actually bring to value something that they may want. And it may not necessarily be the product. It may be just working with you overall over another brand. And so the differentiating factor, that's, brands always ask me, what can I do to stand out in the market? What can I do that may not necessarily be tech-based? And a lot of it, too, is fostering the relationship that you have with your top customers, because, again, those are the people that are going to choose you over another brand.
So that's really good. So
Before you go, I
participation.
just got a question real quick. And I think it's on this topic, so if I may, is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
So we get a question. It says, I know I stayed loyal to Starbucks for years just because of their loyalty points.
Yeah.
Do programs truly work in building long-term relationships, or is this just a short-term fix?
No, they actually build it. And so Starbucks is such a great, they're the ones that, they're such a critical key to success within the loyalty realm. Everybody looks at them. They've custom built so much of their stuff in-house. Lean, mean fighting machines as well. But when you think of what they've done with their program, they've definitely, they've created their own currency. They have now, if you get double points for actually linking a gift card, and then you get double the amount of points, which means that it will make you can gain a reward faster ultimately. So for them, they've built on the data that they've already had, and they foster that data and say, cool, let me segment these rewards based on the customer's previous purchase history. So it's AI and ML. A lot of this is AI and machine learning driven now. Wow. But yeah, because at the end of the day, that's where this realm is going, right? AI and ML.
Yeah, it's almost like the tech is catching up to whoever has the data to be able to optimize it.
That makes sense.
That's a great question. Well, I cut you off and I apologize.
No worries.
But those data points, so participation rate, we've got an answer on what that is. What are those other data points that you would want?
So when you look at average order value, right, and that's the increase in how much money the customer is spending on you based on a transactional basis, that's a really big data point for you, right? And let's take it from the industry of where y'all are sitting in with insurance, right? Did they only buy one insurance policy, or did they buy 2 insurance policies? How can I get them to buy something else? How can I get them to have an add-on? How can I have flood insurance added to that? There's different realms of what you would look like. AOV is literally the incrementality of how much they're spending with you. And then the other aspect is the visit frequency. And visit frequency, a customer could be spending less money with you, but they visit more frequently, which means from a lifetime value perspective, they're actually more valuable than somebody that's only visiting 4 times a year, 3 times a year. Right. So I think when we think of visit frequency, it's going to be based on the industry that you're in, but how frequently are they communicating with your brand to want to purchase from you?
Really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. That's great answers. Great answers.
You talked, we go back to, kind of the inspiration of the journey that you've gone on with customer loyalty. Brett and I were talking about this yesterday as we were preparing, and I think you'll have fun answering this. Is share with us a success story from a brand that you launched, specific, and maybe, I think most importantly, how did it impact the business?
Yeah.
Because I know you tie so much into the economics of the brand, right? Share with us your best success story.
Yeah. So I can't necessarily say the brands that I've worked with, but I can tell you that the success story came from it. So 2 months ago, we were working with a quote-unquote hot dog brand based in Chicago, and they came to us with a crazy...
Can I guess it?
Yeah,
No,
maybe.
you cannot.
And they came to us and were like, Ash, we want this pie-in-the-sky idea, which was, we call it Appless Experience. And I was like, damn.
Appless Experience.
Appless Experience, which means there's legitimately no app, and it's just a wallet offer component, right, tied to it.
Does that? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but does that decrease the amount of manpower it would take to manage?
I mean, it's even not necessarily a management perspective, but to actually stand it up. So typical loyalty programs in our realm right now take between 6 to 8 months to launch. It depends on the lift. It depends on the resources. But what this did what this program did is it was turnkey. So it was a plug and play, appless, literally where your wallet, your offers were going into an Apple wallet or a Google wallet, and we turnkey in roughly like 30 to 45 days, which is just so wild and crazy, fast go to market case scenario. But what the brand did do to us is made us think, can we think out of the box, and can we actually make our product do what they're asking? And in reality, there's so much tech that's involved. There's so many resources that happen. But when we drew out the plan, I was like, holy crap, this is going to work.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it was the financials behind it, the why that they were pushing it, but they were willing to be the pioneers in the market to actually do something that other people were not willing to do. And so having that as like part of the resume of what we've worked on has just been so critical for our team, because it helped us, one, work better together in-house. There were some things that we weren't aligned on, but I think in reality what it did is it showcased, dude, can we do this moving forward? Can this impact mall brands? Can this impact QSR? Can we make ripples across the industry where it is now going to be appless? And I was talking to him yesterday about this. I was like, dude, there's a thing called app fatigue. I hate downloading apps as much as I create them. I hate it. And a lot of it, too, is just like the minutia of like waiting for it to download, and then I have to like scroll 9 million times to get to it and then put all my information. I'm like, dude, how can you just make this so stupid easy that I could just put this in my wallet and be done with it, right? And the other thing that we helped create with them was geofence targeting offers, like the technology that they're utilizing helped do geofence targeting. I was like,
the minute you pull in the parking lot, they've got an ad that hits them.
Correct. And it's beautiful. Just look at that from like a McDonald's perspective, right? There's their brand versus McDonald's. They shoot it based on geofence targeting. They got you.
Yeah.
They got you. It was such a really cool experience.
Geofence targeting is basically if I'm in the vicinity of where you fenced digitally, the footprint, I'm getting an offer that comes right to my phone. That's amazing.
So real quick, pie in the sky.
Pie in the sky.
This is a 6 to 8 month deal. You're crazy to think we can do this in 30 to 45 days. You guys think outside the box. You accomplish it.
Correct.
Talk to me about what did they see as far as return goes? I mean, it had to be good for them, but it had to blow you guys' mind too.
I think from a perspective of working with other vendors too, because it wasn't just our vendor. We were just the platform that hosts it. But when we think of what it did for their brand, right? They had easily 2 times the amount of visit frequency, and a lot of it is ease, right? The ease of use. We don't typically see a big ROI from a program right out the gate. And that's just in general.
Ease of use is a big return, though.
It's
wild. Frictionless, right?
It's a frictionless experience, and I think that was the key learning too. Like, okay, we got them through the door. Now, how do we actually get them to check in? And then it starts fostering the data. So typically, when you look at ROI with regards to loyalty programs, you will not see ROI with it until like roughly 3 months, maybe 3 to 4 months.
Interesting.
It is tough. It's hard to measure, because a customer can come in 1 month and say, you know what, I'm not going to come back. Let's wait 6 months to come back. So trying to track LTV, that's why we look at LTV from more than a 1 year perspective. You actually have to have enough data to support it. LTV, we look at roughly 2 years worth of data.
And to the listener, LTV is what?
Lifetime value, customer lifetime value.
It's a long-term perspective, because right? I mean, usually you're giving something away for free.
Correct. And I think when you look at transactional loyalty, you do got to get something away for free, you know, and it's just to try to get these people in the door.
Right.
And you look at, like, let's look at AT&T or Verizon or, you know, one of the T-Mobiles of the world, right? They say, dope, I'll give you this like $1,200 iPhone for free. You just got to sign a 2-year contract. And then they start building into that. Like, okay, can I get an add-on for warranty? Can I get an add-on if you add another line? You can only add it for $10. Like, that is exactly how they hook you. So in reality, yeah, you're selling a little piece of your soul up front, just so that you can get the customer data and get them in through the door.
Makes total sense.
I've got another question. I've actually got a couple. They're starting to back up.
Come on in.
Way to go! Way to go to the community and to the listeners. All right, Ashley, how do you recommend handling a situation where a loyal customer has a negative experience? How can brands win them back effectively? What a good question.
That's a beautiful question. So when you think of somebody having a negative experience, like let's say at a restaurant, right? I found a roach in my food. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never coming back here.
That one's
right.
tough.
No, it is.
Tough to get over that one.
Tell me this is just fiction. I mean, tell me this is just a crazy example.
Yeah, it is a
God
crazy example.
I don't know what I would do.
But I know, never come back.
Oh, Lord.
Deleting the app. Yeah.
See you never.
Yeah. See you later, loser.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think when you try to combat a negative commentary, right, having that frontline customer experience, right, somebody to actually handle a personal phone call, somebody to handle personalized emails that say, hey, I received this type of feedback. Here is a gift in return. Come back and see us. And if you had the same experience twice, let us know. Because I think at the end of the day, and you know who told me this? TC. TC had a beautiful example of her having a really bad experience at Chick-fil-A. And she's like, girl, I'm writing a letter. And typically when people give feedback, it's either because it was really, really good or something terrible happened at the restaurant. And so, and 9 times out of 10 for me, I'm like, nope, if I had a bad experience on American Airlines, I'm going to write a letter. And what they do is they immediately respond back and say, I'm so sorry for the experience that you had. Here's a gift on us. Try us out again. And if we have the same, if you have the same experience, then we'll try to address that in-house. And so I think Chick-fil-A has obviously they probably have a caboodle amount of money to actually have those frontline employees try to combat that. But I think in reality, if in your industry, right, if you have somebody that has a negative feedback that's like, dude, that guy never called me back. Let me have a personalized comm to you or communication to you and say, let me win back your loyalty, and let's try to fix this. And here is a gift in return. Yeah. Again, you're having to give a piece of your soul for that negative comment. But in reality, what that's doing is helping you basically boost up your game and say, cool, I don't want that to happen again. Right. So how do I learn from my mistakes? And how do I train the frontline staff? How do I figure out what else is going on behind the kitchen? And it could be in any industry. Within the restaurant industry, it's probably because they had a bad food experience or because they had to wait like 30 minutes in line,
Right. You bring up a good point. And I think to myself, there was a saying, right? When someone has a good experience, they may tell one person. Mm-hmm. If they have a bad experience, they're going to tell 7 or whatever the number was. And I think to myself, with a loyalty program, you probably increase the chances of the good experiences being shared. Is that fair?
That is absolutely fair.
And you probably have a better chance of somebody actually giving you feedback.
Yeah.
Because, hey, like I'm a loyalty member. I'm loyal to this brand.
Yeah.
I actually care enough to give you feedback.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a bad experience. If I'm not a loyalty member or I'm brand agnostic,
Yeah.
I'm not going to take the time to give the feedback because I don't care. I'm just going to go to the next person. If I'm invested in the brand, well, I want them to fix it. I don't want to go to the other brand.
Yeah,
it takes more friction for me to go somewhere else. I'd rather them fix the issue.
Yeah. When we were working in grocery, we would do a lot of focus groups, to be fair. So we would actually call on our top loyalty members to give us feedback. And dude, you didn't even have to pay them. They would willingly give that to you for free. And at the end of the day, if I'm that loyal to your brand, I will definitely give you the good, bad, and ugly. But at the end of the day, those are the people that you call on because those are the people that are willing to actually give the feedback that you need.
You just reminded me of something. When I was in a segment of my healthcare journey, we had an idea of calling patients that we had serviced, we had taken care of, to make sure they were happy with our service. And it was amazing, and it was centered around making sure it was our own QC, right? We wanted to just make sure that what we thought they were getting in the form of good care, they would confirm that and share, we had a good experience with a therapist or a nurse. But what happened was, it turned into, oh, by the way, not only was it a good experience, I've got another knee replacement coming up. I want to make sure I get you guys again. I'm putting some, connecting some dots here, right? But it's like, even in something as crazy as healthcare, where you're rehabbing me after a surgery, we started doing those I called them survey calls. I didn't know, there was nothing sophisticated about it. I'm like, let's just call Mrs. Smith and tell her, let's find out how her nursing care went after her hip replacement. And she's like, oh my God, it was great. Julie, my therapist, was great. By the way, I'm getting my knee done. I want to make sure I get Julie back.
Yep.
And it wasn't sophisticated, but it falls right in line with what you're saying.
Yeah. The way that we work, even from the service industry on my side, I've been doing consulting for many years. And I think from a perspective of when you go into the brand, Brett and I talked about this morning, your brand is yourself. Right, you show up every day, and this is the brand that you're fostering. This is your house, so you got to have a clean house when you're going to other brands, and making sure that you talk the talk and walk the walk with them. They have to believe you, and I think in reality, our line of business, although it is fun, it is difficult in that way because not only do you have to be on your A game, you have to know industry standards, you have to know where the industry is actually going, but you also have to know yourself, and I think they're not just buying the product, they're buying you. They're buying your face. And so to your point, Rod, I had a great experience with this woman, this nurse. And I want to continue to have that great experience because, dude, now I'm like a built machine, And I think that's how, from a loyalty perspective, that it's so relative in that way because it's a referral, right?
Yep.
Well, think about it. We talked about lower client acquisition
Yeah.
costs. Like,
Right,
So,
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, this is it's a perfect example of how to reduce your client
Cost to
acquisition
acquire,
costs.
no
Yeah.
doubt.
It's like
No
that.
doubt.
It's way more expensive to go find a new
Customer.
whatever Tammy's name was,
Right.
Yeah.
who's
Right.
getting a knee replacement done, than it is to
Right.
just, you know, make sure
Do a good
Tammy's
job and call her
happy.
back and say, hey, we think we did a good job. Did we do a good job? Yeah, and I got it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
acquisition costs. That's what we talked about yesterday.
There you go.
Another question, may I? I know we've got a ton of questions.
I'm so
great.
stoked.
But I think this engagement's pretty cool.
Awesome.
What is the best way to engage with subscription or renewal based clients?
Ooh, this is so fun. So subscription industry is really interesting, and we have seen a lot of movement in the restaurant side, right? You see the Paneras of the world that are doing subscriptions, and I think the best way to do it is having some sort of life cycle comms to them, right? Get them in, and then fostering how frequently do they actually transact with you, right? So if it is on a monthly basis, how do you communicate with them to make sure that they're renewing every single month? And then making sure that there's touch points along their journey. So if it is a 1-year renewal, great. So how do I start dropping in surprise and delight comms to them to say, thank you so much for your business, here's XYZ, to continue on. And it is such
What a great answer.
Yeah, it is. And I think from a perspective of subscription, that is easy money.
So
So
I think about those
I'm softening
Correct.
the renew.
the
Correct.
renew button. But I think
Correct.
about those. You say comms. When you say comms, you're talking communication,
Communication
right?
emails, yeah.
So you're saying that the annual customer,
Mm-hmm.
because this question originates in the insurance business, we're coming up on our annual renewal.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying 1 to 2 months out, dropping communication to
Correct.
them. My question is, what's the engagement rate or open rate? Typically, what have you seen? Are they
Yeah.
opening those emails if that's the mode of communication? Or
Yeah.
what should the optimal mode of communication be?
So subscription's different with different industries, right? So when you have auto renew versus something that's having to manually do it every single month, that's a little difficult. When it's an auto renew case scenario, typically it's just a smaller amount of comms because one, you're probably going to get that money either way, which is why a lot of programs do go towards subscriptions because it's easy money.
Sticky.
And customers forget, right? Like think about what you do with Netflix.
Yep.
You just forget. But what they do is have the communication touch point. If it is not auto renew, it's making sure that you're touching base with them at least 60 to 90 days out from their actual renewal date. And then from there saying, okay, how can I keep their business? How can I keep them happy? So I would say, at least from an insurance perspective, I would look at it from like every maybe 3 weeks or so, dropping a line of comms like, hey, just making sure everything's okay. And it could just be as simple as that. It's just asking, how are you doing? How is the service that you're receiving? Is there anything else I can do for you? And making sure that you foster on that and having that line of communication.
How
with them.
important would it be during those touches leading up to that annual event to remind them how important it is to retain their business or want to continue to earn their business?
Yeah, I would say it's important from every touch point, right? So anytime you communicate with your customer, we in the restaurant industry, we like to say thank you, right? So we say anytime a customer leaves a brand, sending them an email saying thank you so much for your service. And here are the points that you've earned for today. Just saying, reminding them, correct. Just saying,
Sometimes I don't even know.
yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, right, a simple thank you can go so far in the industry, and having that touch point over somebody that doesn't say thank you, or just, not giving them a reminder, so thanking them for their business could definitely go miles and leaps and bounds within the industry that y'all are in. But I do think, too, to your point with regards to subscriptions, if it's a month-to-month, right, one, you have to foster that comms throughout the month and understanding, is that weekly, is that biweekly? For us, it's not necessarily email open rates. A lot of it is transactional based because they're visiting more frequently.
Right.
Typically, customers that have subscriptions see roughly about a 30% increase in visit frequency than those customers that are not within the subscription realm. So I'm not really too sure what it would be within obviously the insurance agency realm. But when we think of you're already hooking them in. So now how do I actually make them lifers beyond just a subscription? Yeah. And how do I get it beyond 6 months, right? Because you can have a 6-month, insurance subscription, or you can have 12 months, but 12 months would be cheaper. Okay, cool. Now how do I communicate with them throughout the life cycle to say, okay, are you happy with your service? And how frequently do you actually need to do that? Could be dependent on, the service length. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think about like just somebody who's set up on, ACH, where it's just
Yeah.
automatic, right? Like, so creating some sort of incentive, that would be an incentive for someone to get on ACH.
Yeah,
you know?
think about it that from your phone bill, right? Like if
Right.
you look at AT&T, T-Mobile, whatever, I am on ACH, so I save $10 a month immediately than having to actually use my credit card.
Yeah.
So it could be something as simple as that.
So, well, I have a couple things. Is there another question you want to?
Nope, there is, but I want you to go.
I wanted to go through, I mean, because there's this plethora of experience. Talk to us about something bad. Talk to us about the don'ts. Talk about I'd love to know from your perspective. I know you can't share names, which I respect that. I just like, I feel like we can learn a lot from stuff that doesn't go well. I know we do things all the time that don't go well. And that's how we learn.
Yeah.
So
From those pie in the sky ideas.
Something's got to stick.
but they're learning opportunities. So talk to us about a brand or some sort of strategy or some sort of situation where you were going to go to market and there was just some things that were missed or some information that wasn't known and it didn't go well.
Yeah.
And why didn't it go well?
Yeah.
And then what's kind of the lesson from that, you know, if somebody's
Such a
watching
good
this
question.
can take home?
Yeah, such a good question. When we launch loyalty programs, the devil's in the detail, and what you think that your portion, what you think in your portion is important versus another portion not being important, it's a critical miss. So the knowledge of loyalty, at least from my experience too, is understanding how do you actually implement it from the point in which you're getting a customer's data all the way literally is seeing the implementation go live with the implementation team. So we had a massive, massive brand, like I would say it's a worldwide brand too, come into us saying, hey, we want to migrate our program off another vendor. And I was like, dope, let's crank through this, not knowing the level of detail within their own program. I had accidentally not placed all of the business rules in place. And so we had actually not implemented them correctly. It cost them millions of dollars. And so, millions. And so when we think of millions, and it was just because a part of it was the accident of not documenting something in such a fine-tooth detail to the point to where our teams actually run off of this one document to help implement a program. And so I think the lesson to be learned here, one, again, the devil's in the detail, and how detail-oriented can you be by asking the questions that other people are not thinking about. And again, that's why they hire us, right? We have the knowledge base. And so when we got out of that project, I was like, fuck, I don't know if I got to quit or not. But might need to take a month hiatus to get out of here. But in reality, the big thing for me was like, dude, that is never going to happen again. Right. I promise you, you learn from one mistake.
I was going to say, yeah.
No.
You learn. They say you learn you learn lessons, especially when they cost you a lot of money.
No doubt.
And you're not going to ever do it again. And I think, I look at it from like my tennis days and playing sports, right? You're trained for a certain thing. For me, I'm trained to build loyalty programs, and I'm trained to see customers' data in a different way that they're not seeing it.
What are some of those questions? Like, and maybe it's so contextual to that situation, but like, what are maybe some of the questions that you just wouldn't think of that need to be asked?
Yeah. So we offer volume, right? Like how many offers are you shooting out a day? When you think of like McDonald's, right? McDonald's has these daily deals. You go through their offer and you're like, cool, I could get a $2 a Happy Meal. I can get a $3, off $20, whatever, those type of offers. Yep. We didn't realize, holy cow, you have 40 million customers on your base. What are we going to do? And can we support that? You don't think to ask those questions because the big brands typically do it in-house. Like very large brands do loyalty in-house. Them coming to us and us probably capitalizing on the medium brands, so the ones that have about 100-ish locations to 500 locations, you don't think to ask those type of questions because they don't have volume at 40 million, 50 million customers.
And so the challenge, obviously, well, I think it should be spoken, is you're sending out these offers that don't cost anything.
Yeah.
But as soon as somebody walks up to redeem it, regardless of in the future that they might buy more or they might buy more frequently, at that point in time, you have 40 million.
Correct.
A million offers going out in a day.
Yeah. And what does that mean, right? Like, what does that mean from a liability perspective?
Right.
What are you looking at from a revenue perspective, and how do you optimize it? And I think what we learned with that experience was, did we do the financials right? Did we actually do the diligent work around how many people were receiving these offers versus how many were redeeming? And, from my side, I was like, I didn't know to ask those questions because it was kind of out of the realm that I was working in, right? Sometimes you are heads down and you're only doing your job versus actually looking at the bigger picture. And when we think of bigger picture, that is loyalty, right? You got to know from when a customer literally walks into the door to the point to where you actually receive it on the platform, what is happening. And that's what that's a true loyalty strategist, to be fair.
So you guys look at the financials?
Oh, yeah.
So they have to hand over and say, hey, here's the financials.
Yeah. And I think, we can't be accountants, we can't be legal, but we can know the foundational aspects to ask, the big questions to ask a program, like, hey, did you know X, Y, Z? And if you don't, then you need to get resources on your side to take care of it. Because
I just think just from the sheer cost. I mean,
I'm just thinking about the return. It's like it's going to cost something up front in order to run this program.
Well, yeah, and I would even say more. Like, we can't even talk about return if we can't afford it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's like loyalty itself, like the programs, a lot of customers come in and some of them are marketing driven versus financially driven, and then they don't realize the actual cost that it takes.
Fulfillment, crazy.
Wild. It's wild. And so I was actually telling Brett, some of the programs I've launched, like outside of restaurants, some of the retail stuff, we thought through it and I'm like, my God, you know that you're going to be in the red for at least 5 or 6 months. Just purely out of the cost of servicing, right? So the platform, cost, the tech cost, the cost that it, from a labor perspective, actually stand up the program, app development.
Period of engagement, right? It's like people, it's like I think immediately of that cost and the tail on that. We're talking a lot about tails lately, but it's like from the moment I enter the program to the time I do anything, like you've got to carry that.
That is exactly correct. You got to spend money to make money, my friend. That is exactly correct.
I think about something along this line of first interaction. It's how have customer expectations changed? I've got a question here. Over the years regarding these type of loyalty programs, and what specific steps, and this is really industry generic, but what steps should a business take to build trust with their clients on the first interaction?
Yeah, I think what customers have, what we've seen at least on the restaurant side, they're more value driven, right? Customers just want a deal. They want.
You think that's a new evolution?
Yeah, I mean it's actually I don't know if it's been a new evolution, but a lot of major brands are going after the value-based consumer versus somebody being affluent. Because somebody being affluent, they're gonna go and buy whatever they want, right? Regardless of the situation. You're trying to hook somebody. You're trying to hook that 70% of your customer base that isn't loyal. So how do I actually do that? So you see the McDonald's of the world, the Wendy's of the world. You see like even Panera, right? They're going after a value-based customer with value-based menus. So you see that popping up everywhere, right? And then it's just, how do I actually strategize to make sure that these customers are coming back more frequently? Again, it's driving that visit frequency for them to get in through the door, because they could be spending $3, right? But they can be spending $3 18 times throughout the year.
But does the trust element come from it being a value?
Yeah, that is correct. And they can trust that they know that they're always going to get a value from you. But again, that's a different customer experience, right? It's a different customer want. When an affluent customer walks in, they probably want the service. They want type A service. They want, a differential treatment. They want, a fast lane. They want something that's going to be more efficient to them. But when you're looking at the customers that are very cost associated, the ones that are like, I don't know if I can spend that because I have, Susie's dance recital and stuff like that. Those are the people that you have to consciously say, okay, how am I segmenting my offers to make sure that it's going to hit Susie the right way?
Well, you have more churn with that demographic, which means the loyalty program done right is more valuable.
That is correct.
Because the affluent customer usually has less churn.
Correct.
Well, and the element of building trust through the value that you think is speaking directly to their situation is what I resonate with.
I think about just the insurance business, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this are in the insurance business. I think, obviously we sell value in the right liability limits, and from a coverage perspective, we want to make sure we're covering people correctly. Yeah. And there's a lot of different customers that it's just not a priority to them, at least at first. They come to your brand. It's your first interaction with one of your team members. Yeah. They don't know your agent. They don't know them, and they need a transaction. I need insurance today. I think about with the value-driven customer in regards to transacting the business, within the association of what we can do to make sure we're not legally responsible for taking, coverage that's, limited to what they shouldn't have. But they're going to buy what they're going to buy.
Correct.
And then allowing some sort of program, some sort of incentive to engage them to not leave us because they're so price conscious. And then through that loyalty of being able to engage them in cross-selling and then engaging them in the other offers. Relative is so many different times, and obviously you could get into the chicken and egg conversation with this. So many times I think just agencies in general, even in our agency, we just say, hey, we're not going to be a good fit, which I still think is possible. But I think there is a threshold to say, hey, you know, you're not the ideal client, but you are part of the 80%, and we're going to write the 80% because it's 80%. And how do we turn that 80% into the 20%?
Yeah. I think,
What a cool question.
Yeah, it is a really cool question. I think when you look at the personalization behind it, that's critical, right? That customer may not be the right person for you. And that's actually what we say a lot in our business too. Like, that person does not fit our brand, and it doesn't. And we've also turned away other customers, like, at least from my personal perspective, when I've done strat for like on the off beaten path. Yeah, I've turned down customers because I'm like, I'm probably not the right fit for you. You're looking for something else. And they could either leave or say, you know what, no, Ash, I like your personality. So regardless of whatever, you know, what is going on with my program, I still want to work with you, even if it is going to have like a small negative impact on me. From your side, right, if you're saying a customer comes in and is like, you know what, this policy looks pie in the sky, there's no way I can write this, and then you decide to write it anyways.
God, I've done that.
Yep, and you decide to write it
Square
anyway.
peg, round hole.
Exactly. But then it's to say, how much effort do you actually want to put into that customer to them becoming a 20%? How much more marketing power? How much are they worth?
But I look at that and I go,
Yeah,
but
that's a multi-million-dollar question.
But here's why I think it is, because if you're banging on something, and you got to bang on it to make it fit, but don't resell the fact that you had to bang on it to make it fit, they're not going to know that you want them to become part of the 20%.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Yes?
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So is there a and maybe that's probably just a sales qualifying question, but when you're tailoring the loyalty program to make sure it captures that client, but doesn't have a negative consequence of bringing people into your brand that you don't really want, is that part of the strategy sessions? Because you could make a really good offer that all of a sudden entices the wrong people to come into your brand, and then you've got an operational challenge.
Yeah, there's operational challenges regardless of the scenario when you have rich offers that upfront, regardless of the situation, right? You have to be able to take the good with the bad with loyalty, and that is what it is, right? You can have customers coming in with bogus email addresses, and they're not actual people, right? And that's just something that you have to actually weed out. So that's why we always say it's like the 80-20 rule. But in reality, I think when you look at creating a program, right? We just worked with another very large enterprise brand, and they were like, hey, we're set with this like rewards catalog based program. I'm like, dope. Who's your customer? Like, do you know your customer?
It's just too many offers.
Yeah, and I think in general, when they said, 20% of our customer base doesn't use an app. And I was like, why? They're like, because they're 60 years old and above. And I'm like, good God, we got a problem, huh? Because like that rewards catalog is not going to be a program for you. And you have to look at operational challenges. It's, again, you have to ask those hard questions.
And this loyalty program, that's come back to your point as far as it hits every vertical in the business. I think about this. We've got a buddy of ours who's a monster agent. He's probably a top 10 agent in the country. And there's always these... Every lever you pull has different impacts somewhere else. And it's having eyes wide open. You might be okay with it, but don't pretend that there are not consequences for pulling on the lever. And he drives a ridiculous amount of massive online traffic, and he just says, look, if you're going to drive the traffic that I drive, your retention's going to drop. You just have to be okay with it. It's impossible to drive the traffic that we drive and not to have a retention drop. You just got to be okay with that. And it's like, I appreciated that because it was like you could tell somebody who's actually done it and says, hey, there's more benefit here. But you need to understand that there are secondary consequences. You're not going to send out $1 million worth of offers and then expect to have the return the next week. Like, you're going to have a cost associated with that before you get the LTV to go up. That's why it's LTV. It's not first-year revenue.
Exactly.
I have one question I wanted to bring back to the listener at home, which is specifically to, even in our business right now, of like surprise and delight. You talk about that a lot in regards to, there's a point system. You could do a point system. And then there's the surprise and delight, the two different ways that you can reward customers. I'd love you to talk about those two, the pros and cons, and then bringing it back to the local, professional or business owner that's watching this is to say, what are some things that we could do? What are some touch points that you would be looking for, like in our business, that maybe wouldn't be that expensive, but would be high impact and good return to do this?
Absolutely. So some of the pros and cons and I'll go with the pros approach for surprise and delight. one, think of yourself as the end user experience, right? I go to Chick-fil-A and I'm like, all right, cool, I just bought my sandwich. And then the next day I receive another sandwich in the mail. I'm like, what? I got a free sandwich. I'm going back. So it is that like surprise moment that you don't know what they're actually going to offer you. I think the downfall of what Surprise and Delight is to different brands too is it doesn't create synergy with your customers, right? It doesn't have that everyday value because the customers straight up don't know when it's coming.
Right.
And I think one, it's hard to also plan out when do you actually do that? So when we look at actually curating Surprise and Delight programs, we look at it on visit frequency and then we look at it as spend, right? So how much are they spending on a monthly basis? So if they're spending, let's say for instance, over $100 a month, great, shoot them this offer. If they're only spending $50, okay, let's shoot them this offer to see if it incentivizes them to come in one extra time. So there's,
then you're measuring that.
Correct. And you measure, okay, how many actually redeem that offer? Now let's figure out if we can test drive, A/B test another offer, and would they come in for that one?
God, that's where the data's so
Yeah, data's, and that's loyalty, man. That's critical to path to success is all data. When you think of what you guys can do on your side, right? And we talked about subscription renewals and stuff like that. Even having a handwritten note to your customers, like if I had an auto renew and I actually made, or not auto renew, but I made my payments in time 3 months in a row. Cool. Let's send them a shirt. If I made my payments 6 months in a row, dope. Let me send them a handwritten note and a $100 gift card. Dope. If I made it a year, give them a badge and say, yeah, you're the Be Extraordinary extraordinaire. And so here is, a gift package. And it can be something custom curated by your own brand to be able to give that out. And that's what we look at from Surprise and Delight perspective. It's doesn't necessarily need to be monetary, but it's the act of actually giving something to somebody else that is like, I wasn't expecting that. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. So and then the points in the point system in Contreras is probably the opposite.
Yeah.
It's just it gives you more consistency. The customer
Correct.
knows what they're going to get.
Correct.
They're in control.
Correct.
But the downside being, you mentioned this last night, which blew me away. Essentially, if you have a points program, like you basically have an outstanding liability on your balance sheet.
Correct. Yeah. And that's, I think customers don't understand the financials, right? A lot of people that make the decisions around loyalty are marketing based, but they do not understand the financial implications that come with loyalty. So on a points based program, right? Anything that's earned from a points perspective is outstanding liability. And that means that you do not know when a customer is actively going to redeem those points for a reward. And in reality, that's the margin that's coming off of a check.
Right.
So the brand actually has to take that as outstanding liability and move it month to month to say, we have this many points outstanding, which could be 10 cents per point. That's how much money we actually have to remove each month, like month over month from the balance sheet.
Wow.
And so, I think
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's
it's-
right.
And those are big numbers.
No,
big
it makes
numbers,
total
very
sense,
large
but
numbers.
like-
Yeah. And so when we look at like other loyalty programs that have, the recurring, you earn 600 points and it automatically deposits a reward into your account. Great. That actually decreases the amount of liability on your books because it's an automatic conversion. So when you look at McDonald's, right? McDonald's has an expiration strategy that allows customers to earn, but only up to 6 months. And they say, cool, your points are expiring. So what it does is it drives an incremental visit so that customer knows, okay, dope, I need to redeem these points immediately because they're about to expire. And there's so many
And
customers.
it mitigates the risk
Correct,
for
it mitigates the
the
risk.
finance team that's sweating
Yeah,
bullets because all these
exactly.
things are carrying over.
Correct. When you have at least a widespread program like McDonald's, it's a huge risk. And I think from that perspective, you look at 6 months versus 12 months. How much more money do I want to carry over 12 months? And so that's a big reason probably why they actually looked at the 6-month expiration strategy.
That's amazing. So renewals would be a big one that you would look at in our business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from where you look at from a renewal perspective, how much money are you going to lose if that customer doesn't renew, right? And I think that's where that customer journey actually comes into play and those small touch points with the customer versus just like leaving it an auto renew and dope. I'm not going to check back on them until like month 6. Like that's a mistake.
Or if they have a problem, right?
Correct, exactly. You want to hear the good things about what's
Proactively,
happening. Correct?
And would you look at gross, when you ask the question, because the devil's in the detail on the questions, this is good for the listener that's listening to this, but when you say how much money are you going to lose, you're not looking at gross revenue. Are you looking at gross profit?
Correct, gross profit.
That's important because someone says, well, I'm going to lose $200 if this renewal doesn't go. Well, no. You have the cost of the goods and services itself.
Correct.
What's the gross profit.
Correct.
So you might have a customer that it's, $30 in gross profit. Maybe you don't run loyalty programs for that because it costs more to give the program than it does to actually give the offer.
Yeah, and I think when brands come to us, right, you actually have to have the money to do it. It is not a cheap stake to actually stand up a program, at least from the tech side, right? Because you look at the cost for the technology itself, the cost of standing up an app, the resources that it's going to take to make sure the program is going.
Right.
The
Just
points,
the labor.
Yeah, the labor.
Just like if we didn't want to have
Correct.
technology, but we just want to have somebody that's going to be responsible for us.
Correct.
Would you segment that customer? If I said, okay, I'm going to make a gross profit, let's say in our business, we have small margins. I'm going to make $20 from this renewal in gross profit. And I'm going to do this loyalty program because I want to retain and I want to boost retention. Would you segment it to say anything below $25 in gross profit, I'm not going to deploy this loyalty program?
Correct. Yeah, you have to look at it from a negative perspective, right? Like, how much money am I incrementally going to make? When you look at restaurant, at least from our industry, from the industry that I'm in, it's the cost of goods sold, right? How much does it cost to make that burger? Great. Okay, how much is the labor that's on top of it? Because sometimes cost of goods sold doesn't actually include the labor in there. And then you look at, okay, I'm going to shoot out this offer that's 50% off that one line item. Okay, well, how much am I actually making now?
Right.
It could be an $8 burger that you have, 70% margin on, but then you cut that basically in half because of the loyalty program and the offer that you're giving them. And so you truly have to be really careful with how you deploy offers, because that in our realm, that's the discount rate that's affiliated with the program itself. And for us, and I think this is probably a good thing for you guys too, when we look at offers and distribution of offers, typically a course structure itself has to have around a 10% discount rate. And that's what we say, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have it anywhere, fluctuating between, 15 to 20%, because that gives you less room to play with your offers. So the core structure, which is the points, so redeeming the points for rewards on their rewards catalog, but then if you have the discount rate too high, then that means that you can actually incentivize customers with these surprise and delight offers, with these other offers that you want to make sure to help drive incrementality.
You could totally see how you could get upside down on that.
Correct,
No doubt.
absolutely.
No doubt.
And
Yeah.
people don't understand that too until they're in it.
Couple questions from the community.
Let's do it, community.
I'm really proud of you guys. You guys are showing up in numbers, and here's some cool questions. So here's two questions. All right, I'm gonna ask them both because I think they kind of connect a little bit.
Okay.
From a loyalty expert's view, that would be you. How do you think social responsibility impacts customer loyalty?
Social responsibility.
And I was I didn't know what that meant, so I was assuming you might.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I would say, is that philanthropic? Like, what is that? What that?
Maybe we can have some clarification to that question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by social responsibility? While you're thinking about that,
I think just their mission, what they
stand for.
Like it's like Tom's, like
Yeah,
that's
same with Chipotle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it is that, I
Right.
have a really good answer for this one. So when you look at strategy for brands that do that, a lot of brands actually have their own. They have their own philanthropic mission, right? They have some sort of mission that they have the brand story. Like you guys, right? You have that Be Extraordinary story behind it. That story needs to be told to your customer base. They need to know, why are you here right now? What did it take you guys to get here? When you think of how McDonald's started, it truly was just like a one-off situation. They didn't have the powerhouse that they had, but they had the branding behind it. They had the story behind it. Chipotle, and that's what we call emotional loyalty, right? It's beyond now transactional. I now identify with the brand because I'm emotionally connected to their cause.
Yes.
So for you guys, right, it is, y'all are mom and pop. Y'all are so mom and pop. But at the end of the day, you guys are the faces of this brand, and your agents are the faces of this brand. And so whatever that cause is in-house, your customers need to know. And even from a storytelling perspective, right,
what a
that
cool
could be
thought.
that could be your website, that could be your email journey, right? Them coming in, you telling them your story, and thank you so much for joining Be Extraordinary.
So social
Part of the
responsibility being our ability to tell our story.
Correct, to tell your story.
I love that.
Yeah, it's emotional loyalty. That's what
And we
call
kind
it.
of do that, right? We through our discovery process, we have
Even
that
this
built.
right here, that's exactly what this is too.
So so the answer to the question would be that like it probably has a high impact on
correct.
customer
Yeah,
loyalty.
I mean,
Right.
absolutely, because they're tied to your brand at that point, right? They're going to choose
That
you over.
emotional
Correct, the
loyalty.
Well,
emotional
that's
loyalty.
the emotion you're after.
Yeah.
Very cool.
One other question. Another question, I should say.
I love it.
Do you think influencer marketing helps build real customer loyalty, or does it just drive short-term sales?
It's such a tricky question, and it depends on the brand, depends on the industry. To be fair, I honest to God wish that I was an influencer, because I was like, I obviously was born in the wrong era, because these girls are making millions of dollars. But is it sustainable, right? Like, are they going to be making millions of dollars when they're 30? I'm not an Alex Earl, but I'm going to tell you, I wish I could be, like, for how much money that girl's making. Social influencer, I think is short-term lived. That's not a long-term game plan. One, you actually have to pay them out pretty heavily. And at the end of the day, if they're not going to stand behind your brand, and more than likely it's because it is their own brand that they're trying to market.
That makes sense. So it's like they find a company that wants them to represent them.
Correct.
And it's because it's a good deal for them.
Correct.
They stand in front of that brand, hoping to bring clients. And my thought would be it's short-term sales, right?
1,000%
Unless there's some long-term client, like a Nike deal for MJ or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
like Roger Federer when he was part of Nike, when like Tiger Woods, but obviously that guy had to leave. But still, like they had
He's
a long.
still there.
Is he?
No.
I was like, is he? Did I miss
Well,
that?
he was until a couple years ago.
Yeah,
he
then-
just launched his own line, Sunday
interesting.
Red.
Oh, now you know. Now I know.
brand, though.
But you think about those icon or those influencers that have been just brand loyalists for forever.
Yeah.
I think it's probably fairly different than those big box, huge branding influencers instead of like just the social media. If I've got 20, 30 small social media people repping my brand, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but to be fair, you could do that with your own brand, right? You don't need to hire a social media influencer. You can, I mean, honestly, passing out T-shirts, like doing those type of things, doing smaller case events, and having gear repped or having some sort of touch point with your local community, that's social influencing in itself, right? And I think what you guys have done with the brand, with y'all's brand, has brought it alive to social. It's such an interesting concept of insurance, because I'm like, man, have I ever been communicated like that by any of the agents I work with? Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. You guys
That's
love
cool.
that.
yeah,
Thank
you bring the personal touch to it, which is why I said, I was like, I'd rather be loyal to somebody that has that personal touch to it versus just trying to push something out to the mass. You're no little Geico lizard, but you do crush it. So
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome.
I've got a couple more questions.
Awesome.
Let me ask one more, and then we'll dive back into our questions. How should businesses balance loyalty programs with authentic relationship building? It was a good one.
Oh, and that's also that personalization touch, right? Loyalty programs are, one, data driven and financially driven. That's the bigger two reasons why our customers actually launch them. When you think of the personalization effect, and it's legitimately like putting a first name on a subject line. It is,
Which is way harder than it seems.
Yes, what a good
probably for you.
Or like it's all in capitals. So you're like, can you please not put my name in capitals?
Why does it sound like you're yelling at me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think having that personalization touch throughout a customer's journey, and I want to get into this because I think that is the most critical touch point of a customer, and that's the life cycle. That is the point in which they come in. Did they have an awesome experience with you? And that is, having emails or SMS sent saying, thank you so much for joining, Ashley. Here's your reward. And having touch points that are, 3 days apart, 5 days apart, 7 days apart. It could be even 30 days or 60 days to say, hey, Ashley, thank you so much for your business. Thank you so much for renewing. Is there anything better that I can do for you? And it is those smaller fine points that people do miss because they're thinking about how can I financially get them in fast and how quickly can they transact versus just actually legitimately putting a first name on a subject line. It truly does make an impact.
I got a follow-up to this question. Mm-hmm. Does a loyalty program ever trump an authentic relationship strategy? That's my question.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the reason why I'm going to tell
it's
you.
just a good supplement,
correct,
right?
It is, and it will always be a supplement because in reality, do people have, it costs so much money to stand a loyalty program up. For those mom and pop shops that don't have that money, but they have the base, right? There's a restaurant that I go visit in Miami all the time. It's called La Ñap. And there's another one down in Coconut Grove. But they are the most authentic human beings that you can ever meet. And do they need loyalty programs? No, because they have word of mouth. That's like referral based, like I had one good experience. I'm going to tell 8 people like, bro, you got to go have that meal. Like it is so good. You had a great experience. And in reality, what that is doing is driving incrementality because you are so personable. they're buying you, right? That's I said that from the beginning, from even from a strategic perspective, they buy you as a brand because you are your brand. So think about it from that perspective. It's the personal relationships that you do have that you can foster, and that again, it could just be something very simple by remember somebody's name.
Well,
And
to
their
bring
order.
it back, what you originally said is the main purpose of having a loyalty program is to get the customer to
Data.
identify
Correct.
themselves up front.
Correct.
And what's interesting in our business, every single customer is already identified
Yeah,
up
that's
front.
It's so beautiful. That's
So
such a
it's,
beautiful.
yeah, because you're looking at it and going, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's the hardest challenge
Yeah, it is a
in the
challenge.
food industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're going, you immediately have it, and we're going, we don't even know what we have because we're not. I mean, we're looking to optimize it. And you're
Yeah.
going, no, you have the loyalty program. It's just a matter of how you deploy incentives
Correct.
to be able to get certain behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can
And-
test drive that too.
And I think that's to bring it like very practical. That helps a lot for me. It's like, okay, what's the purpose? Boom. Okay, great. Well, we already have that. Okay, great. What's the secondary purpose? Make an offer that drives a certain behavior because
Correct.
that behavior creates this type of result.
Correct.
So what is the result that we're trying to create?
Yep.
And then we already have the customer identifying
Correct.
themselves. What type of incentive or offer do we need to put in place to be able to test?
Yeah.
Test, does that get the result?
Yeah.
Maybe we put 3 offers out.
Yep.
And we see which one gets the result.
The KPI. So when we look at standing loyalty programs up too, it's critical for us to understand what their KPIs are. Again, customers don't know what they don't know. Sometimes they're like, I want 100% participation rate. That's not going to happen. McDonald's
Right.
doesn't even have that.
Right.
But in reality, what can we look at from the data that you currently have, and what would be an incremental revenue increase for you?
Right.
And I think it's such a beautiful thing that you guys are in, like the industry that y'all are in, because the customers are already identified, but also looking at segmenting who your customers are, right? Your top 20%, those people have to be in a different tier. Like
Yes.
those are the customers that need to have the most fostering because those are the people bringing in the most revenue.
Yes.
And then from looking at, okay, who are the customers that are almost to that top 20%, and how do I foster their relationship, and what type of offer is it going to incentivize them to get into that top 20%? And then understanding, what is it going to take for me not to lose these customers that are in the 70-ish% and churning? And it could cost you more money just to make sure to incentivize them to make sure that they don't churn. And typically that's what it is, right? You have a high churn rate regardless of the situation in a restaurant. And I would say like maybe about 50% of customers, if not more, are inactive when you look at loyalty programs in the restaurant industry. For you guys, it would be probably significantly lower because reality, y'all have auto subscription. So when we think of how do I foster the churn before, how do I foster the customer relationship before the churn, it's say, how do I look at the customer journey? What are the touch points that I'm making throughout the journey? Who are my top 20%? Who are the
That
customers
resonates.
that are correct?
So those 3 segmentations, I'm trying to get just tactical for a second. 'Cause
Correct.
This is gold, because I'm just thinking how we can implement this immediately. So
Yeah.
you take those 3 segments. Would you create the same offer for all 3? Would you separate out offers for each one depending on what the result?
Yeah.
Would you try both and test?
Yeah.
What's the lens in which that you would attack that problem?
So one, I think a big thing to understand is you need to know what customers are buying, right? What exactly are they buying? Your top 20% is going to come in without an offer because they're coming because they like you, right? They don't need an offer. You already have that emotional loyalty tied to them. So having something like a less rich offer to them is probably going to be more practical from a cost perspective, right? Because more than likely, again, they're going to come in regardless if they have an offer or not. Okay. When you look at the medium frequency customers, the customers that are near to that 20%, they might need a little bit of incentive, right? Yep. And it could be like a medium-based discount offer. It could be like a 15% or a 10%, but it still says, cool, I got an offer and I'm going to choose you guys over Geico because of this. Now, your lower frequency customers, those are typically your higher discounted offers, right? Those are the customers that need the 50% off, that need the 40% off, because those are the ones that are probably going to have more risk to churn.
Got it.
So you have to have a bigger incentive to actually get them to come in.
Got it. And the anticipation is hopefully move people up
Correct,
the ladder.
Correct.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, right, that 80% or 70% of your customer base is probably going to be offer-based or offer-driven anyways. Yeah. And do you want to foster the relationship with them? Maybe.
Depending on, and then you could even get more granular to say, here's our ceiling, here's our bottom.
Yeah.
If it's below here, we're not doing any offers because it costs us more to keep it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we look at churn that way too, right? So when we look at 365 days after inactivity, so somebody that hasn't transacted with you 365 days, dope, and they're out. Like, you have to look at it from a practicality measure and saying, am I going to get this customer back? And when we look at, and we say churn on, obviously in our business too, but less than 5% of customers typically come back.
Wow.
Yeah, less than 5. And
Yeah,
so it's,
we're in a beautiful business. It's the
Yeah.
oldest SaaS business in the planet. So, but it is, you can get, and you know, a lot of people watching this right now are in the insurance business. You can get complacent.
yeah.
Because you just think renewal, all it is another frequency.
Yeah.
Right. And we tend to get complacent to think, well, there's a renewal, so they're going to renew. And it's
Yeah.
like, especially when you start having a larger business, a larger agency, when you start to see the churn, even though it's marginalized
Yeah.
compared to other industries, it starts to be a large number.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, having strategies to be able to move the needle on that is super impactful to the
Yeah.
bottom line. I wanted to talk. You mentioned something last night. I wanted to talk. I have 2 questions, and then we'll close if that's okay, unless somebody has something else.
Nope.
But one, we talk about driving more revenue, driving more frequency. What is the true profitability impact of a great program
Yeah.
of the businesses that you watch, see, and have worked with, versus just growing revenue?
Yeah. So when we look at bottom line, right, and revenue that's coming in, from our side, we typically only see the loyalty, right? So you can be making $10 million in loyalty, but what does that actually mean to the bottom line if you only have 15% participation rate? So when in a great business would probably have between 10 to 15% to the bottom line, a great business. And when you think of the McDonald's of the world, where over 50% of their customers are coming in that are loyalty, that's a massive number. Yeah, it's a massive, massive number. And they,
Really?
yes, dude, they require app to actually to order. So when you think about that, you have to actually have an app to order, and they identify themselves up front. But if that is going to the bottom line, you're like, great, good God, man, how much money are you actually making? And in reality, I think, again, it's probably 10 to 15% that are the great, great, great programs that are having that money get to the bottom line. We don't always see that, but I think when in reality, you're like, okay, are they expanding their program? What else are they adding to it? Are there any technological advances that they're going to be adding because they have that money coming to the bottom line? So there's that aspect of it. And I want to touch base on something that you had referred probably in your prior question, but how do I make money, right? And it's the devil's in the detail by asking questions to customers, like a preference center, right? Like, how many kids do you have? Do you have a boat? Do you have like a rented property? Do you have a full, do you own a home? There's questions within a preference center that can get into the devil's into detail. And when you think of your top 20% of your customer base, those customers would be more willing to actually try a different product because they're already sold on the product that you gave them. So asking some baby questions that literally are like, are you an expecting mother? Okay, are you about to get married? There's different things that you can help personalize that touch just by simply asking, what are your preferences, and tell me more about your life. Wow. And then cross-selling that way, and that can also help.
I got to follow up to that. Because
really cool.
I'm thinking about this, and we've spent a lot of time talking about Fortune 100 brands and above, and that's a lot of your experience.
Yeah.
But we've also made a lot of mention to mom and pops.
Yeah.
So we got 2 segments of listener,
Yeah.
right? Somebody that's trying to relate to you in the Fortune whatever game, but then they're sitting here going, I see value in what we're talking about,
Yep.
but I don't really know how I need to take action.
Yeah.
So my question is, and it kind of goes along that line that what you were just alluding to, but it's like, to the mom and pops that are listening or will likely listen, what would you say to them with regard to just how they would implement something?
Yeah. So
Maybe I need help with that question.
Well,
but
I think even like just take even an agent that works inside of
Precisely,
our agents.
precisely.
Like, if you wanted to have something that was less formal, but it was an informal loyalty incentive type program,
that's what
and
I'm
you
getting
didn't
at.
have a lot of capital,
Yep.
what would be some things that you would do?
Referral programs are big, especially for you guys, right? Because it's word of mouth. Implementing a referral program of some sort, and whether that be like a punch card, right? So who you referred XYZ, and after you refer 3 people, I'm going to give you a gift. And the gift can get richer and richer as they actually start referring customers is probably a really big one. And it's
really cool.
very easy to implement too. And that could just be email based, right? Like that could literally just be, hey, I referred XYZ, or them identifying to say, did somebody refer you? Right? And then the name of that person, and then having kind of like a stamp card or some sort of badge badge affiliation, that would be really cool. I think the other aspect for mom and pop, it is email is life. And I think from a perspective of having too many emails, is that, does that work? And I think most brands or most customers have email in some capacity, because how else are you going to get offers out to them, right? Just a simple asking of the first name, last name, and an email address can truly go way further than you think. And even if they're not within the insurance realm, right, they haven't signed any type of policy, but it's a lead. So it's understanding who that customer is and then fostering a relationship with them from the ground up, and then saying, okay, how can I upsell them on XYZ? But referral program would probably be the first one that I would say for mom and pop, because that one's easy. That one's just printing something simple, saying, hey, thank you so much. And let's say they're like a bakery, right? I have a punch card. If you come in and punch 3 times, then, you get a free bagel on the end. Very simple. And it fosters, again, that relationship, because the customer wants a reward at the end. That's what it is. It's tailoring the comms to the brand and what you have to offer them.
Love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's great.
Yeah, there's just so much. I
love loyalty.
There's so much.
Ash, it's just so good. It's every time we have these conversations, it's just so good. We got to finally put it on camera.
Yeah, I'm so stoked.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm blessed, because I think from a perspective of how much I love this, right, and how much you guys love your brand, and how much I think that this could actually be replicatable. Loyalty is replicatable, regardless if you have tech or not. You don't need technology to actually foster relationships and loyalty. Again, they're buying you, they're buying your agents, because it is a brand. Speak your brand up front. Yeah. Tell your story up front, and then and then it's referrals, it's word of mouth. It's somebody actually wearing a t-shirt that says "Be Extraordinary," like, oh, dope, I know that guy. Like, I know Brett. I know Rod really well. Cool. But it is that fostering of a relationship with the customer. And then think about yourself in retrospect, right? Like, I am a customer. How do I like to be treated? And that's truly how you have to have your brand face it. Like, okay, if I were on the other side, I'd be pissed if I didn't get XYZ. And here's why. And so I think you do have the both plays, right? It's standing something up, but then also looking at it from a customer's lens.
It's amazing. Yeah. Well, my last question was which was, if I'm a business owner, what is the things that I should take away from this conversation on that? So, that's just practical.
In sync, dude.
It's almost like we.
It's almost like you're the same person.
I'm asking a follow-up, and you're going, okay, that was my last question.
It's amazing, man. Amazing. Well, I love that. I just taking really cool, data-driven conversations and bring it to practical implementation. There's levels to these games. And,
Absolutely.
To think that you're going to go from level 1 to level 6 isn't just how it works. But don't let time go by without doing something. There's something that you can take action on right now, and that's the difference. You're watching this and you're taking information in. The difference between it working or not is if you just take one little nugget and you just start on the path. So I will make a commitment right now here live in front of the audience. I know we're going to get together as an executive team, and we're going to take one piece of information, just one, at least at first, and we're going to implement it, and then I'm going to follow up with you in 30 days and let you know how it's going. So,
I can't wait to hear about it.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. That's called accountability right there.
Yeah, customer first mindset.
Love that. Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for having me. I've had the pleasure and the best day ever. I really appreciate you guys having a conversation with me.
So great. Well, all you guys that were listening at home, appreciate you so much. Honestly, this has been super fun. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, and you may be doing something while you're watching it, but I just wanted to let you know from all of us, we appreciate it very, very much. And it means the world to us. I hope you get value out of this stuff. That's why we do it. So if you saw some value, please send this to somebody. It's always nice to be able to get a message from somebody, some rich content. And obviously, I would love to get a shout out to our girl here. So Ash, thanks for flying in. Appreciate you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll
I appreciate
Our pleasure.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank
Bye, guys.